Hello, welcome students. Let's look at the story Hearts and Hands, which is there in the syllabus of class 9th and 10th ICSE. This story has been written by O. Henry, and this story precisely gives a mistaken identity between two characters, the Marshal and Mr. Easton. It is a mistaken identity for a lady, Miss Fairchild, who initially was given a wrong illusion that Mr. Easton is the Marshal, and the Marshal himself introduces himself to that lady to be a culprit. And what does happen in the story at the end? How does this identity reveal itself? How the people recognize who is the real Marshal and who is the real culprit? This is shown in the story. So now let's look at the story. At Denver, there was an influx of passengers into the coaches on the eastbound B&M Express. So these first two lines give us an introduction that there was a train which was going towards east, and it was present at Denver. It was standing at the Denver railway station, and the train name was B&M Express. So there was an influx of passengers, means many passengers were moving in, some were moving out, and so on. In one coach there sat a very pretty young woman dressed in elegant taste and surrounded by all luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. So here we are introduced to a very pretty lady who was sitting in one of the coaches, and she was surrounded by such things as if anybody could see and tell that she is an experienced traveler who used to travel and knows what things to carry with her. Among the newcomers were two young men, one of handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance and manner, and the other a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. The two were handcuffed together. Now, two young people, they ascended the coach, and their introduction is given in the form of their appearance. One was a very handsome young man with a handsome countenance. Countenance means face. And the other was a glum-faced man. That means a serious-looking man. Ruffled, that means he was rough. He had no style. He was a simple and you can say straightforward person, a simple, serious person. But he was heavily built. That means he was somewhat stout, and he was roughly dressed. He didn't have any concern that how his dress would look to others or anything like that. The two were handcuffed together. Now both of them were tied to each other with a handcuff. So in the first para, we are introduced to a young lady who is very beautiful and who carries things in such a way as if she has an experience of traveling many times to several places. Then we are given an introduction to two young men. One was a handsome man with a bold and a handsome face, while the other was roughly dressed. He was a serious looking person and he had no concern what others would think about him, but both of these people were handcuffed to each other. As they passed down the aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat offered was a reversed one facing the attractive young woman. Now as they were passing through the aisle, they saw a seat for themselves, and then they found one of the seats which was just opposite that pretty young lady. So they sat over there. Here the linked couple seated themselves. The young woman's glance fell upon them with a distant, swift disinterest, then with a lovely smile brightening her countenance and a tender pink tinging her rounded cheeks, she held out a little grey-gloved hand. When she spoke, her voice full, sweet and deliberate proclaimed, that its owner was accustomed to speak and be heard. Now here both the men were sitting in front of her. Initially she didn't give any, you can say, notice to both of them. She just gave a simple glance, but then immediately her face broke into a smile. And her countenance, her face brightened immediately. And it became pinkish with a glow. And then she moved her grey gloved hand. That means her hands were having gloves in them. So she moved her hand ahead in order to introduce herself and greet the person whom she knew. Now when she introduced her, she was moving her hand towards that person. It seemed as if she knew how to talk to people and she knew how to listen to the people. Well, Mr. Easton, if you will make me speak first, I suppose I must. Don't you ever recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? Now she spoke to one of them as Mr. Easton. She addressed that person. She said that, Mr. Easton, if you allow me to speak first, I suppose I must speak. So don't you recognize your friends whenever you meet them somewhere in the West? The younger man roused himself sharply at the sound of her voice, seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment which he threw instantly, and then clasped her fingers with his left hand. Now as soon as that younger man out of them, he heard his name and the sweet voice of that lady, he immediately rose up from his seat. But as he was moving, he immediately was, you can say, stuck somewhere because of the handcuff. This gave a slight feeling of embarrassment in him, but then he let it go off and then he grabbed her hands with his left hand. It's Miss Fairchild, he said with a smile. I'll ask you to excuse the other hand. It's otherwise engaged just at present. So he then told that glum-faced man that she is Miss Fairchild. And then he said to Miss Fairchild that if you can excuse my right hand, it is a bit engaged. He slightly raised his right hand, bound at the wrist by the shining bracelet, to the left one of his companion. The glad look in the girl's eyes slowly changed to a bewildered horror. The glow faded from her cheeks. Her lips parted in a vague, relaxing distress. Easton, with a little laugh as if amused, was about to speak again when the other forestalled him. The glum-faced man had been watching the girl's countenance with veiled glances from his keen, shrewd eyes. As Mr. Easton said that if you can excuse me, this hand is engaged, he rose his right hand by showing her. Now this immediately changed the expression of that girl's face. Here they have said that her eyes grew larger in bewildered horror. She was quite confused. Bewildered means confused. And she had a horror, a fear in her eyes, thinking that he is a culprit. And the glow that was there in her cheeks immediately faded away. And her lips, they were half open, as if she was surprised to see. Now Easton, he gave a little laugh, and as he was about to speak something else, the other man, the glum-faced man, he stopped him. And that glum-faced man, he continuously looked at the expression of that girl with his keen eyes. You'll excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you are acquainted with the marshal here. If you'll ask him to speak a word for me when we get to the pen, he'll do it, and it'll make things easier for me there. He's taking me to Leavenworth prison. It's 7 years for counterfeiting. This glum-faced man, he tried to hide the identity of Mr. Easton, that he was a real culprit. He said that it seems as if you both know each other, and if you can tell the marshal, that means a glum-faced man had introduced Mr. Easton as a marshal. He said that if you can allow this, if you can speak to this marshal, so that and convince him that he speaks something good about me when we reach to the pen. Pen means a prison. When I reach the prison, then he should speak something good about me there, so that my life becomes easy there in order to suffer the punishment. And he is taking me to Leavenworth, where I have been punished for 7 years. And that too for the crime of counterfeiting. Counterfeiting means cheating somebody or deceiving somebody on some business or something like that. Oh, said the girl with a deep breath and returning color. So that is what you are doing out here, a marshal. Now the girl, she felt relaxed. And she said, oh, so now I come to know that you are a marshal here. My dear Miss Fairchild, said Easton calmly, I had to do something. Money has a way of taking wings unto itself. And you know it takes money to keep step with our crowd in Washington. I saw this opening in the West, and well, a marshalship isn't quite as high a position as that of an ambassador, but now, Easton, he said calmly that Miss Fairchild, I had to do something in my life. I had to earn something. So, as you know that wherever money takes somebody, wherever you get money, you have to go there. So this sentence, money has a way of taking wings unto itself, means wherever a person finds a good opportunity to earn money, naturally a person will move there. And you know it takes money to keep step with our crowd in Washington. And in Washington, it's a huge competition. And there are a lot of expenses that you have to keep up with the crowd in order to live here in Washington. And so he said that in the West, I saw this opening, so I applied for it, and now I'm here as a marshal. But I must tell you that marshal doesn't have a high position as that of an ambassador. The ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call any more. He needn't ever have done so. You ought to know that. And so now you are one of those dashing Western heroes, and you ride and shoot and go into all kinds of dangers. That's different from Washington life. You have been missed from the old crowd. Now she said that ambassador post now doesn't call anymore. Nobody gives importance to it. But as I see you, you are now one of those dashing heroes who run after the culprit, chase it, and you have an adventurous life, and that looks good. And this life is more adventurous than the life that you had in Washington. So we all have been missing you from our friend circle. The girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuffs. Now, as a girl, she told about all her feelings. She, at times, was staring at the shining handcuff. Don't you worry about them, miss, said the other man. All marshals handcuff themselves to their prisoners to keep them from getting away. Mr. Easton knows his business. Now, the glum-faced man knew what was she thinking, so he said that, please don't worry. It is the duty of a marshal to handcuff himself with the prisoner so that the prisoner does not run away. And Mr. Easton knows what to do. He knows his business. Will we see you again soon in Washington? Asked the girl. Now the girl asked Mr. Easton that, will you be able to meet us at Washington? Not soon, I think, said Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. Mr. Easton said that I don't think I'll be able to meet you people very soon because my days of freedom are now over. Butterfly days means days of freedom. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. Her eyes were shining softly. She looked away out the car window. She began to speak truly and simply, without the gloss of style and manner. Mamma and I spent the summer in Denver. She went home a week ago because father was slightly ill. I could live and be happy in the West. I think the air here agrees with me. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. Now, this paragraph tells us that she had some feelings in her heart for Mr. Easton. So she said that I love the West, and me and my mother have been here for some time, but my mother has gone a week ago because my father was seriously ill. Now this also shows us that she was irresponsible towards her parents. She didn't love much her father or her mother. So she says that the atmosphere here in Denver agrees with me. I like the atmosphere here. This shows that she has some feelings for Mr. Easton, as she wanted to stay wherever he was. She says, but people misunderstand things and remain stupid. She says money isn't everything for everybody. But people, they try to misunderstand things and they remain stupid and don't try to know each other's feelings. She wanted to say this. See, Mr. Marshall, growled the glum-faced man. This isn't quite fair. I'm needing a drink and haven't had a smoke all day. Haven't you talked long enough? Take me in the smoker now. Won't you? I'm half dead for a pipe. Now the glum-faced man immediately intervened in between. Actually, he was afraid. Maybe Mr. Easton may speak out the secret. So he immediately said that, Mr. Marshall, don't you think you have spoken so long? And I am in need of having a drink and have not smoked for a long time. So if you take me to the smoker, I can have a pipe, because I'm half dead for a pipe. I want to have smoke. The bound travelers rose to their feet, Easton with the same slow smile on his face. Now both of them just stood up. Easton had to obey the marshal. The glum-faced man was actually the marshal, so Easton stood up with him. I can't deny a petition for tobacco, he said lightly. It's the one friend of the unfortunate. Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, you know. He held out his hand for a farewell. Now here Mr. Easton as a marshal said that, well, I cannot deny the demand for a tobacco. And when a person is in a very unfortunate state, then tobacco is the main rescue for it. So we'll meet sometime again, because now duty calls me and I have to go. And then he bid farewell to her. It's too bad you are not going east, she said, reclothing herself with manner and style, but you must go on to Leavenworth, I suppose. She said that it is very bad that we are not going to east because we have to go to Leavenworth. And while speaking, she was dressing herself more elegantly. Yes, said Easton, I must go on to Leavenworth. Easton, he agreed that yes, I have to go to Leavenworth. The two men settled down the ale into the smoker. Now both of them, they went down into the smoker room. The two passengers in a seat nearby had heard most of the conversation. Said one of them, that Marshall's a good sort of chap. Some of these western fellows are all right. Other people who were listening to them, out of them two people who had been observing their conversation, one of them said that that Marshall was a good chap, and some people are very good who are in the West. Pretty young to hold on office like that, isn't he? Asked the other. The other said, well, he is very young to reach to such a high post. Young? Exclaimed the first speaker. Why, oh, didn't you catch on? Say, did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to his right hand? Now the first speaker said, what do you think? You are also mistaken. Have you ever seen a marshal handcuffing his right hand to the prisoner? So make it out that who is the actual prisoner and who is the actual marshal. Because Mr. Easton was bound by his right hand, this means that Mr. Easton was an actual prisoner, the culprit. And the main, you can say, marshal was that glum-faced man. Here the story ends up in which the secret is revealed, that who is the main marshal and who is the real culprit. Now let's look at the appropriateness of the title, why this title has been given to the story, and let's look at the characterization also. So in this, there is a sting in the tail. O. Henry always is known for giving us surprise endings in his story. So here we are initially given an introduction to two people. One who is a glum-faced man and the other who is a young and a handsome person. But in order to disguise the identity of Mr. Easton from the young lady, Miss Fairchild, the marshal, who was a generous person, who had a very good heart, he had introduced Mr. Easton as the marshal. And he introduced himself to be a culprit who is going to the prison in Leavenworth for 7 years. And on which, you can say, on which type of crime? The crime of counterfeiting. So this shows that the heart of this marshal was very, very kind, very, very generous. He was a good man. What about Hans? The Hans was given a mistaken identity, in which at the end we are given an introduction that a marshal never handcuffs his right hand to the left hand of the prisoner. So here we are given an identification that due to the mistaken identity of the handcuffing of the hands, nobody could make out who is the real marshal and who is the real culprit, till the last, at the end, the first person told that a marshal never handcuffs his right hand to the left hand of the culprit. Now comes the characterization, in which we come to know that about, first of all, we are speaking about Miss Fairchild. So Miss Fairchild is an interesting personality, in which we are introduced that she is a very pretty lady and she carries things in such a way that it seems she is an experienced traveler and has gone to several places and she knows what things to carry in her traveling agendas. And from her voice and facial expression, she appears to be an arrogant person, because initially when the two people, they sit in front of her, she showed a slight disinterest. But then when she recognized Mr. Easton, she immediately broke out into a smile, and then she started speaking to Mr. Easton. But then she was immediately surprised to see his right hand handcuffed, and the glow of her face immediately vanished away. And she was quite surprised. Her lips were half parted in surprise to see that Mr. Easton was handcuffed. So in order to save the identity of Mr. Easton, the glum-faced man introduced himself to be a culprit. Now here, when Mr. Easton says that my butterfly days are gone, because she says that will we be able to ever meet in the West? So Mr. Easton says that no, it is not possible, because my butterfly days are over. We are also given an introduction that how she was towards her parents. When her mother heard that her father was very ill, she went a week ago, but she was still there in the West, which shows that she was a very selfish person and had no concern about her parents' health. And the other thing was that as soon as she saw Mr. Easton, the glow came back on her face and her eyes shone, which shows that internally she loved him, or she had some feelings for him in her heart. And then when Mr. Easton said that I am a marshal, but that doesn't count more than an ambassador, and when she said that the ambassador doesn't count much, which shows that she liked Mr. Easton more than a person who was an ambassador whom she knew initially. And then Miss Fairchild had a fair name and a face, but her heart was not so fair. Now Mr. Easton was a young handsome man. He had a bold, frank countenance, as was given in the introduction initially. Now when he came to know that his old acquaintance Miss Fairchild is there, then he took the advantage of the marshal. When the marshal introduced himself to be a culprit and Mr. Easton to be Mr. Marshal, he immediately agreed to that. He didn't try to speak the truth in front of Miss Fairchild. So that means he was an opportunist here also. So, and Mr. Easton had taken an easy recourse to make money and had been counterfeiting. That means he was an opportunist who didn't believe in hard working. That is why he had done some or the other counterfeiting act, due to which he was taken to a prison and had to suffer a, you can say, punishment of 7 years. But Mr. Easton at the end also did not give her a hope that we would be meeting soon, because he said that it will not be possible very soon to meet each other. And it was clear that he would not be able to continue his relationship with Miss Fairchild. Here at the end we are given some intro of this type. And then the glum-faced man, Mr. Marshall, he was a very kind-hearted man. Though he was roughly dressed, he had a glum face, that is a serious looking face. Still, he didn't want that Mr. Easton should be embarrassed in front of Miss Fairchild, and so he introduced him to be the marshal and himself to be a culprit. And when at the end, when they were conversing, when the glum-faced man felt that at some or the other point Mr. Easton is going to reveal his truth, immediately he made an excuse that he wanted to have a smoke and a drink, and that he is half dead for a pipe, so that the identity of Mr. Easton does not get revealed in front of Miss Fairchild. Now it showed that Marshall was a very understanding man, a very generous man who didn't want to break the relationship between the two people. So here we have come to know about the entire story, and hope you people have understood it. If you have understood it, press the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.